Oh, hey, I didn't see you there. I'm just brewing some coffee. Would you like a little bit? Well, let me get my cup and then we'll start the video. What's up, everyone? Lance Hedrick here, and today we're going to take a look at the Fellow Ode. So, the Fellow Ode was the most anticipated grinder release of 2020. And a lot of people have absolutely loved it, some people not so much. There have been a lot of reviews. I'm really late to the game, though I'm quite familiar with the Ode. Today I wanted to make a video going over it because I have a lot of thoughts regarding this grinder. So first, let's go ahead and just jump in. We're going to go over my likes and dislikes of the workflow and aesthetics, and then we're going to jump into the internals and the some things that I like about how it's programmed, how the motor works, and the burr sets themselves. But first, aesthetics. So obviously, when looking at these, and this is the recently released white Fellow Ode, I mean, it's a gorgeous small grinder. Very compact, angular. It fits perfectly in any nook and cranny in your kitchen. It's not overly bulky. It fits really well. The sound is not very loud. It's especially when you have the lid on. When you take it off, it gets a little louder, obviously. But so overall, I think it looks really nice. I enjoy how big the front knob is. I like the catch cup and how it's magnetic. I think that's a really great feature. How you can just boom, just like that. It's really intuitive. There's only one button, and you know how to change grind setting just by going to certain numbers. Now, there are a lot of cons, though, in my opinion, with the grinder as far as how it's designed. So first of all, I absolutely loathe the hopper lid. It just kind of like sits on there. It's not really, they're just tiny little grooves. So when you put it on, I mean, you can sit here and get on there. See what I'm saying? So the hopper lid is not ideal to me. I wish it was something a little bit more robust or something that clicked in a little bit more. It just feels kind of, I don't know, like a kind of an afterthought, right? Yeah. Anyway, on the inside, there's such a minimal angle of feed rate, which can be good in the sense that it slows down the feed rate. But when you use RDT, which is necessary for this, RDT, by the way, for those of you who aren't familiar with that term, it's Ross droplet technique. It's just the idea of putting a few drops of water or a spray of water into your whole bean coffee prior to grinding. This will lessen drastically your static and correlatively your retention. So whenever you spray your beans or you put a little drop on it and shake it up, because it's such a minimal decline, it's such a minimal angle, beans can kind of get stuck and sit on the side due to the friction. So you kind of have to babysit those beans and kind of push them down because the friction wants them to stick on the sides. So that's not ideal. You know, I want to be able to dump in my single dose, put the lid on to hush it up because I'm typically grinding when people are asleep. But with this, you kind of have to keep the lid off if you're using RDT to kind of push those beans down. So that's not an ideal thing. Another issue, obviously, when we're looking at the Ode, and we're just switching up, we're going with the black Ode now, are the steps. This doesn't have fine increments whenever you're trying to dial in. You don't have like a macro and a micro adjustment. You have massive steps, so you can't go in between the two, or it'll switch over as you're grinding, right? So that's kind of problematic that you have these massive differences between one and the second notch and the third notch and the fourth notch, etc. So you don't have seamless, stepless grinding, which isn't the biggest issue in the world for filter coffee, but you know, it's something that I wish were not there. And we'll go over that more later. And then finally, one of my big issues with the grinder itself is the fact that there's no real way to add bellows or anything like that. So a lot of grinders, you have a circular entry point. You can put some sort of bellows or something like that where you can, you know, kind of pop it to get all of the retention that's in the burrs out into the final catch cup. But with this, because it's such a wide, long hopper, it's kind of difficult to just make bellows for it. Now there is, I'll put in the link down below, my friend Brian Quan made a video with a bellows that was created just for the Fellow, but it was made somewhere where shipping is difficult from, so I haven't been able to get one, but you can check that out if you're interested. But anyway, that is kind of like my ideas or my thoughts on the pros and cons of at least how it's set up. Now, there are a lot of things though that I absolutely love about this, and in fact, whenever you get SSP burrs or another pair of burrs I'm going to show you here in a bit, Gorilla Gear burrs, whenever you put these burrs into the 64mm grinder, I do believe, and I will continue to pontificate on this, I do believe that this is the best filter grinder before you hit diminishing returns. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, yes, there are better grinders, but the difference between this grinder and a $2,000 grinder, I believe, is so minimal that the difference in price, you're losing money essentially. There's a lot of diminishing returns going on there. So let's go ahead and check this out. So taking apart this grinder, super easy. You just pull the faceplate off, and then all you got to do is, if you want to take the knob off itself, you take out these shallow screws, and that helps you calibrate your grinder, okay? And then to take off the full face, you go to the deep set screws, and that's going to take off the face and allow you access to the burrs. Now, if you remember, one of my cons on this machine was that it was stepped, okay? Well, there is a way to make it stepless, like this, okay? And I'm going to show you that just really quickly. So all you got to do to make it stepless is we're going to pull this faceplate off, and we're going to just take out one piece. Now, some people, when they have done this mod, have found that their knob tends to drift when grinding, and that's very normal for grinders to do. So all you need to do, if this is happening to you, is take some Teflon tape and cover up the threads. All right? So here we go. Oh, come on out. Come on out. All right. So now we have this out. We've got this is where we can zero the machine. So you can come down and calibrate. You just turn until you hear the chirps. So I'm at chirps. So what I would do is turn this off, set that as 1, or go a little bit past chirp, up to you. But what we're going to do here to make it stepless is you take this screw out of the middle. Very simply, take the screw out. All right, screws out. We have this disc, like a washer. Whoops! And there goes that lid. My con, my enemy, we're just going to slide this off, okay? Now, right here, there's usually a little knob, and behind it a spring. You just pull those two things out, replace everything, and you are good to go. Now, for this, well, normally this comes out, so we're going to pull this out. Now, normally what you'll do, if you want to make it stepless, and you're having drifting issues, you're going to pull this out, okay? This is the little piece that pushes the back burr or the rotary burr into the stationary burr. This is the piece with that little gasket right there, all right? So this pushes into that rotary piece to get those burrs closer and closer together. So when we're twisting, this is what's being twisted to go further and further into the grinder, all right? So this is what needs to hold its position. And the way that we can make it hold its position to stop it from drifting is by taking some Teflon tape, some of that plumber tape, wrap it around these threads so that there's more resistance. Once you have that, you're not going to have any issues with drifting, okay? It's just a tight piece of Teflon tape right there. Then you're going to just screw it back in, and you're going to be good to go. Now I'm going to clap, and everything's going to be reassembled. And all right, so we got that all put back together, got it zeroed out, and I took off the main faceplate so that now we can take a look at what's going on inside. So I'm going to click that out. Oop, that little guy was a little anticipatory of that jump. Anyway, we're going to pull these out, and this is what the inside looks like. Now, these are not the standard burrs. I'll show you the standard burrs just in a second. But here's what the inside looks like, all right? So right here, we have the spinning auger. So if I turn this on, this is dangerous. Do not try this at home, but I'm going to turn it on. You see the auger is spinning right there, all right? Turn that off. So what happens is this connects to this rotary burr. This little guy that was anticipatory and jumped on out, that's what kind of keeps this spinning in line with this. This little guy goes inside of the grooves here, which connects to the grooves there. Bada bing, bada boom, we have a rotary burr. Then we have the stationary burr on the back. Now, let's go ahead. I'm going to talk about one of my favorite things about this grinder, which is magic. It's voodoo magic, and I love it. What kind of voodoo do you do? Alan Stone. So what we're going to do is we're going to look first at how the motor works, and then we're going to look at burr sets. So what I think is probably the most underrated, under-discussed, underappreciated aspect of the Fellow Ode is how the motor works. So the motor is capable of maintaining 1400 RPM output regardless of the amount of coffee you put in, regardless of the density of the beans you put in, regardless of whatever. All right, so the motor is only 140 watts, which means you can't really do espresso on it. You can occasionally. I don't recommend doing it often. It will degrade the motor quickly, but it is fantastic for filter. Anyway, 140 watts, but it outputs a lot more RPM than what you would imagine. And what happens is, because of some voodoo magic that they do, it responds to the beans in the chamber and is able to maintain 1400 RPM. Now, how that happens is proprietary. I can't say. I don't know. Who knows how it works? It's crazy. It's a fugazi. It's fugazi. It's fairy dust. But whatever it is, all I know is it gives you incredibly consistent particle distributions, and that is because consistent RPM is incredibly important to give you a really tight distribution. So if you put beans in, and typically, let's say a motor has 2000 RPM output, whenever you put beans in, it can go down if the load is heavy, down to like 1500 RPM, and then ramp back up as the load is light for the coffee that's going through the burrs. This one, however, comes out starting fast, and then it will reel down to 1400. You can actually hear it when I turn the motor on. If you're quiet, you can hear it. You ready? We're gonna do that again, even closer. Ready? So what you hear is the motor going. So what it's doing is it kicks up and it's going at a really quick RPM when you turn it on. Then it slows down drastically to find that 1400 RPM. That, I think, is the most underrated, underappreciated aspect of the Fellow, and why I think it is the best filter grinder before you hit diminishing returns, which is incredible at the price point. Anyway, one of the big fallouts with the Ode's release was a lot of people did not like the stock burrs. These right here are what come with that Fellow Ode, the V1 version 1 burrs. Now, why did people not like these? Well, it's pretty simple. These burrs have these like ghost style edge teeth, which just means that they are not flush. So the finishing teeth here are very, very big. So that means as it's spinning, large grounds can escape even if they're at touch. All right, so what does that mean? What does that entail? What that means is you cannot really do single cups of coffee without severely under extracting your cup. Because of the geometry, these produce very few fines, which is fantastic, but also because of the geometry, you're not able to go very fine at all. So if you don't have many fines and you're grinding really coarsely, you can't hold the water back long enough for single cup brews to hold the water back for a proper full extraction. So you're getting a lot of weak under extracted cups that are not pleasant. So a lot of people have been really dishing on V1 burrs. I would push back on that and say these are fantastic if and only if you're doing batches of like 35, 40 grams and above. So if you're doing batch brew at home, these are actually fantastic burrs, in my opinion, because they're producing so few fines, and you need that coarse of a grounds anyway for a larger batch. But of course, right now they're working on V2. But until those come out, what I think is incredible for this grinder is what a ton of people have been using, the SSP burrs. Now these are absolutely fantastic. I've been using these constantly since I got them in like a month or two ago or so, and they produce some of the best filter coffee that I've had. And I think that is a combination of these SSP burrs, which give really high clarity and really high sweetness, and it's a fantastic brew. But on top of that, I think the consistency in the RPM is also really helping with that. So these burrs are fantastic. Now, just a couple of days ago from filming this, I received a new set of 64mm burrs that by the time this video is posted, they are available for pre-order. I'll put the link below. I have been incredibly impressed with these the last few days I've been testing them. These are the Gorilla Gear burrs that are crafted by John Gordon. Okay. These are coated in black diamond coats, whereas these are red speed coating. And so it's going to give you a lot longer life on them, and the cuts on them are quite different. So if you look closely here, very different grooves, very different cuts. Now they can both grind for espresso, but they're doing very different styles. The way I like to match these up when I'm talking comparisons is the SSPs are going to give you a much more clean brew. It will have a little less sweetness in comparison to the Gorilla Gears. It will have a little less body in comparison to the Gorilla Gear burrs. The Gorilla Gear, on the other hand, is going to have a much bigger sweetness. It's going to be very, very juicy and a very silky, silky body. Very tasty. So the way that I'm kind of, my parallel, my analogy would be kind of like the Commandante hand grinder versus the Kinu. Commandante kind of emphasizes clarity and those kind of aspects, whereas the Kinu emphasizes that sweetness and body, as you know, Matt Winton, the World Brewers Cup champion this year, discusses in his decision-making process to choose the Kinu. Anyway, so both of these burr sets I think are incredible depending on what your palate preferences are. I probably, as of now, I probably lean towards the SSP, but that's only because I tend to really like tea-like style coffees where the florals are really enhanced. I don't really need much body, but for some coffees, having this with the intense silky body that it produces and the juiciness, it's quite nice. So I'm really in love with both of these burrs. It's not a runaway contest between them. I think they're both incredible, incredible burrs, incredible options for you at home. I know that these are around $180. I'm not quite positive, but I'll have a link below and you can check it out what the price on the Gorilla Gear will be. But what I can tell you is either one of these burr sets is going to turn this Fellow Ode into the best grinder you can get for filter before you hit diminishing returns. Okay, and that is a Lance guarantee. So just to kind of go over everything real quick. There are obviously the flaws. You have the lid, you have a lot of static, you have the stepped knob, which you can turn stepless. Really the biggest flaw that you can't really change unless you 3D print something is the lid. It's kind of frustrating. But for the static, you can always RDT. For this, you can make it stepless. All right, so I've reconstructed this, and there is one other thing I wanted to discuss. There's been a reported issue that people have been having putting their SSP burrs in, where it's too tight on that stationary back chamber. Or that back carrier. So what I wanted to say about that is it is also very, 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 very tight on mine, and I get it stuck frequently, but it's just because how tight some of the tolerances are on these grinders. So just be very careful when you're doing SSP, the SSP burrs, to put it in as evenly as possible. If you are off at all, it can get jammed or stuck. Okay, it has to go in as evenly as possible. Make sure you clean out all of the grounds, put it all the way down where the holes are aligned, and kind of pop it in. All right, so it's going to be a very tight tolerance. All right, very tight. But it has gotten stuck on me multiple times. I've always been able to get it free. The easiest thing I've found is if you're trying to pull the burr out, just take a screwdriver and put it in one of the holes, kind of just push it, and once you can get that thing spinning, you'll be able to pop it back out, okay? Sometimes it kind of does get stuck because how tight the tolerance is on that inside carrier. So keep that in mind if you do this. Don't freak out, don't stress if you get in the burrs and it's not fitting. But as always, everything you do is at your own risk. I'm just telling you in my experience with SSPs and these, I have been able to get them in and out, even if it's a really, really, really tight fit. Okay? Okay. So that is kind of everything. That's kind of the video. I really love this grinder. I think if you are someone that drinks pretty much only filter at home, I think it's definitely worth the investment of buying one of these. I think they're like $299 US, something like that, and then upgrading the burrs to either maybe the Gorilla Gear if that flavor profile sounds really nice to you, or to the SSP if you prefer that type of flavor profile. Either way, I genuinely believe this will give you the best bang for your buck, period, and it is the best filter grinder. Again, I can't say this enough, before you hit diminishing returns, which is shocking at the price point. With the SSP burrs included, it's under like $500 US. That's incredibly cheap in comparison to competitors that are, you know, $1,500, $2,000 and above. So unless you're incredibly wealthy, I don't think there's any reason to go higher than this when doing filter coffee brewing. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. I'm just playing with a screwdriver now. I don't know why I'm doing it. But if you have any questions on the Fellow Ode, please ask below. Or if you have any questions on how I've done this mod or anything like that, you know, just let me know. I'd love to chat with you in the comments below. You know, again, hit that like, the subscribe, all of that stuff, share with your friends, whatever you might want to do. Really appreciate it. Check out the Patreon in the caption below. Anyway, I appreciate you all. Thank you so much. And I hope you brew something tasty today. Cheers.